morning, Council. I would like to welcome members to this extraordinary full council meeting here at the Mechanics Theatre, and thank you to our hosts, Burnley Leisure, for accommodating us. Can I ask members of the public not to talk during the meeting, as this can be very distracting for members of the council and others listening to the debate. Can I also ask everyone to ensure that any mobile devices are switched to silent and do not cause a distraction during the meeting. I would remind everyone that the use of mobile devices for the taking or making of phone calls is not permitted in the meeting. I would also remind members that they are required to stand when addressing the council meeting if you are able. We are not expecting a fire alarm tonight, but if one should occur, please follow the mechanics staff and officers out of the venue to the assembly point in the car park to the rear of the town hall. This meeting is being streamed, and I would like to welcome those watching on the Council's YouTube channel. When members are invited to speak, please wait for a microphone to be brought to you. At the rise of the meeting, please exit table by table. Thank you. Item number 1 on the agenda, minutes of the last ordinary full council meeting on the 29th of September 2021. I will move those minutes. Madam Deputy Mayor, will you second those minutes?
I do, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
The minutes are approved. Item number 2 on the agenda, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? Councillor Carl. We don't believe that that falls into an interest on this matter. Thank you, Councillor Carl. Okay, item number 3 on the agenda, public question time.
Mr. Mayor, we have the following speaker to address the Council, Mr. John Rowe.
Thank you. Mr. Rowe, please come forward. You have 5 minutes to speak on the sale of land and housing issues.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
5 minutes from now, thank you.
My question is to the Leader of the Council. I'd like to ask the Leader whether he will commit only to selling council-owned land, so far as he is able, to be dealt with for the building of housing on terms that the developer builds zero-carbon housing. And I'll say a little bit about why that matters and how it is to be achieved. 15 years ago, this council was going through the process of the Elevate scheme, which was a Labour government initiative designed for levelling up, I believe. It primarily in Burnley consisted, the majority of the money was spent on knocking down a lot of our old terraced housing. And at the time, I was a severe critic of it because my argument was that we would do better by doing up more of those houses rather than knocking down fewer of them, and we would get effectively more bang for our buck by doing that. Now, I think it would be instructive to have a look at the EPC reports on 2 properties. One of them is 68 Reed Street in Burnley Wood, which is a typical 19th century terraced house. I've chosen that because it was done up by the council under the Empty Homes scheme, and a pretty good job appears to have been done by it. It's the equal highest scoring on that basis with all the houses in that street. It comes in with a rating of 75. The assessor reckons that it's responsible for 1.9 tonnes of carbon dioxide emitted every year. Compare that with 3 Marlow Crescent, I've chosen that because it's a similar sized property, 65 square metres compared with 60 square metres, and it's one of the first new houses to be built on a cleared site. That comes in with an assessment of 81 and produces 1.7 tonnes of carbon dioxide every year. Not a huge difference. But one thing which hasn't been taken into account is that the fact to build a new house creates a one-off load of carbon emissions into the atmosphere. If you take that into account, there really isn't much difference. In terms of carbon emissions, the Elevate programme didn't make a lot of difference. It may even have made things marginally worse. And it's a pity, because it could have been so different. Because the houses that have been built on brownfield site, it emerged at the last meeting, there were 1,600 of them. I would think 1,000 of those must be on land that the council had cleared. Those houses are going to be with us well into next century. A house once built, you can expect it to last at least a century, and in all that time they're going to be churning out thousands of tonnes of carbon emissions. Contrast that with vehicles, where a vehicle lasts 20 years, and in 8 years' time I won't be able to buy a new diesel vehicle to replace the one I currently drive. It could have been so different, because a zero-carbon home is not that difficult to build. I'm not going to go into the detail of it. If you don't know how it's done, if you're not completely familiar with it, there are plenty of people who can advise. Andy Fewing certainly knows about this sort of thing. Gordon Birtwistle has an engineering background. I'd be surprised if he hasn't got a pretty clear idea either. If you want to do this, and you should, you're not going to have political opposition. The Green Party, obviously, they're going to be in favour. To judge by what Gordon was saying at the last council meeting, he completely agrees with me. Charlie Briggs used to be in the Liberal Party. I don't know what the differences are between them, but I don't think they split on the basis of climate change. The Conservative Party is pushing as hard as anybody for climate change aversion. I don't know what the Labour Party policy is, but I believe you're against climate change the same as all the rest of us. This is something that you can do. You will not get political opposition, but where you may have difficulty is implementation, because once councillors make a policy, it's up to the officers to do something about it. And I just wonder whether you're actually going to have cooperation from the council's officers or not. I might be wrong, I might be right. But bear in mind,
Mr.
in the
Rowe,
past,
you have
they've not dealt very sensibly with the council's property
Mr. Rowe,
when
you
they
have
gave
30
it away.
seconds left.
I would suggest that you can get help from other people in other parties. Gordon's an ex-MP. He probably has contacts with no builders who are able to do this, or even our present MP. I'd be grateful to hear what you have to say. And if you're going to tell me that it can't be done because you'd never be able to sell the land otherwise, and that's what officers have said, put that in your pocket.
Thank you,
and tell me
Mr.
what
Rowe.
you really
Your
think.
time is up. Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Anwar, as leader, could you please respond to Mr. Rowe?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for your time, Mr. Rowe. I share your passion for reducing our carbon footprint. The Executive is committed to achieving this, and you will note that climate change responsibility is now included as a responsibility within the portfolio of every Executive member. The development of housing presents an opportunity to reduce the borough's carbon footprint. Building environmentally friendly houses is a key consideration, and this is being explored and promoted by officers. Adopting a strict condition that any council land sold for housing could only be for zero carbon housing is not the panacea, as this needs to be balanced with the viability of the relevant sites. Property values in Burnley can often result in housing development that is marginal and at times unviable on brownfield land, particularly with the historic mining and industrial nature of previous uses. That said, we need to remain innovative and build, develop and renovate homes that are environmentally friendly and fit for the future. It is important for officers to be delegated certain responsibilities to ensure that the council can operate smoothly. This is established within the machinery of local government and common in most authorities. I do believe that appropriate checks and balances are in place on responsibilities to delegated officers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Anwar. Moving to item 4 on the agenda, exclusion of the public. Councillor Afrasiab Anwar, will you move, please, the exclusion of the public? Councillor Sue Graham, will you second?
Mr Mayor, I second that motion.
Can all those in favour please show? All those against, please show. The item is carried. Just wait for everybody to be excluded.